context, I've been with Novato PD for about 6 years. I'm born and raised in Novato, grew up, went to school through high school in Novato, attended Sonoma State University, and then went to the police academy. So I've lived here, I grew up here, I've been here, I really love working here. It's really great to see such a great turnout and to be with all of you in person. I recognize some faces. I participated in a Zoom meeting, I think it was at the end of last year, with Grand Valley Mobile Park. And so, unfortunately, I know you had some issues, and hopefully I can provide you with a little bit of information and some tools for your tool belt to help reduce these incidents from occurring. It's no secret that throughout the state of California, there's pretty much two main things that we continue to see increasing when it comes to talking policing and crime and things like that. Homelessness and property crimes. So property crimes are, thefts, burglaries, stolen vehicles, catalytic converter theft, stuff like that. Persons crimes are robberies where somebody is, someone's attacked, or batteries and things like that. Luckily, we have not seen an increase in persons crimes as much. Those are usually specific households, domestic violence, things like that. But we are seeing definitely a rise in property crimes, and we're trying to get a handle on it. But with law changes over the last 7, 8 years, it's been really challenging. And I'll go into that a little bit. But my main goal for today is to talk about a concept called crime prevention through environmental design, which my team gets trained on, and it's essentially what can property owners, residents, neighborhoods do to reduce the likelihood of them being victimized. Now, I understand that I'm here to protect you all, and I wish I could guarantee that everyone would be safe and no one would have their stuff stolen, but the reality is, we have typically 4 patrol officers on covering 26 square miles at a time. And a lot of neighborhoods are going through similar things. So, the partnerships we have with the community are very important, and I'm extremely impressed by your MFS team. It's definitely one of the more elaborate and cohesive teams that I've ever seen for a neighborhood. And we get a lot of requests about neighborhood watch and stuff, and I'm just going to start referring everyone to Matt, Kevin, and all of them. Say, hey, go talk to these guys, because they know what they're doing. So thank you, big props to the MFS teams. So on the screen behind me is my team, but there's an adjustment that I haven't made yet because it's too emotional for me. My partner Alex Mueller, he's no longer on our unit. He's transferred to a different unit. He's working a county task force position. So we haven't filled his spot yet, but our unit, the water response team, is me and Sergeant Melissa Eagle, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. But as I'll talk about in later slides, just a little background on our team. We're a problem-oriented policing unit. So when we have a specific problem in a specific area and it's continuous and it's gotten to a level where our patrol staff doesn't have the time or resources to handle, that falls on my desk. And then I'm tasked to work with property owners, go to neighborhood meetings and try to find a more permanent solution to prevent these issues from continuing. But the kind of 3 things that my unit's in charge of are crime prevention, crime suppression, which is a proactive way to prevent crime. That means going out and stopping cars, contacting pedestrians, catching criminals before they commit a crime, essentially. And then homelessness. So homelessness takes up a very large portion of my duties, as you've all probably seen if you're on social media or just drive down to Safeway. It's pretty, again, we don't have it like San Francisco or Oakland, thankfully, and I don't think it's going to come to that based on my experiences, but it's definitely, that's probably the #1 community issue the police department receives complaints about is homelessness. So I know we're not necessarily here for the homelessness aspect, but any of those things that you might have questions on, please don't hesitate to ask. If you go to our city website or you Google the Water Response Team, there's a lot of information about our homeless efforts in our crime prevention efforts as well. So we're mainly here for crime prevention, so I just want to talk about a couple things that Novato PD does to enhance our investigative skills. And this will translate into things that you folks can do as well. So the biggest thing that we've seen lately, the biggest help we've had lately is license plate reading cameras. So several years ago, we received grants to put license plate reading cameras on top of some of our patrol vehicles. So when we're driving around, it'll alert us if it's a stolen vehicle or it's entered into the system as, a gang member or this vehicle is known for auto burglaries or something like that. And it's been a fantastic investigative tool. But that tool is only as good as those cars being out on the roads in the right place at the right time. We have also received a grant, and disclaimer, I am not a salesman for the company Flock, but I can only speak to Flock as a license plate reading camera system because Nevada uses it, and I have experience with it. So we have a grant through Flock, which provides stationary license plate reading cameras. My old partner Alex uses those cameras in his neighborhood. His neighborhood pitched in for those cameras and put them at the beginning, at the entrance. They have a one-way entrance into his neighborhood out in Fairfield, and they affixed Flock cameras for their neighborhood. We have Flock cameras affixed in 2 locations. One of them is privately purchased from the HOA, but we can monitor it. And then the other one was through a grant, and we put it near our shopping center that attracts essentially the most crime. And we've recovered stolen vehicles. We've connected cases, violent crimes. We had a string of robberies in a specific shopping center where these cameras were, and we use the cameras to help us solve these crimes. So they're, unfortunately, does it help? Will we apprehend the person immediately? Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. You're all right. But when we're conducting an ongoing investigation, these license plate reading cameras are huge for us. And we're not the only agency that uses them. Other agencies throughout the Bay Area use them, so we have access to those cameras as well. What's great about your property is that you have cameras at the only entrance and exit point for your neighborhood. And rest assured that Matt and the Marin Valley Mobile Home Park staff is committed to trying to help the police department solve these crimes. I've received emails from them. I've facilitated exchanging these photos with the investigating officer to try to investigate these leads and track down suspects. So I do want you to know that your management is very cooperative with us, and they're doing everything they can as well in sharing that information. Believe it or not, there are some organizations that don't like to share information with the police, even though we're trying to help them out by investigating their crimes. So I'm just very grateful for our partnership with Matt and his team. And then other type equipment that we have, body-worn cameras, dashboard cameras, all things that we look at. If just because we don't catch someone immediately, we can go back and look at these things. We've had detectives pull up dashboard cameras and actually getting a suspect vehicle on a police officer's dashboard camera. They just didn't see that person right away, but we got a license plate or from there. So all this technology is very helpful. And I understand technology is a sensitive subject. Some of it is easier to use than others, and as technology progresses, it's more and more challenging to use. I even struggle with it sometimes. But the reality is, this technology is, because our society continues to advance, this technology is needed for us to help solve these crimes, essentially. So when I speak to license plate reading cameras and surveillance cameras and all that stuff, I'm happy to provide more information as to what experiences I have with which companies and what works well and what doesn't. But again, I'm not a salesman for any technology company by any means. It's just my personal experience. So I talked about Flock. The other experience I have is Arlo cameras. And there's so many different companies that provide surveillance cameras for residential or commercial purposes. I highly recommend everyone looking to getting some type of camera system. The only one I personally have experience with is Arlo, and it's very easy to use. You can download an app on your phone. I think the hardest part about it would be trying to mount it, it sounds like you guys have a very supportive community and you guys can help each other out with that. But it allows for live streaming, and it will save. It's on motion detection, and it'll save those videos. If you just 1 second.
Can you say the word of the company more slowly for me, please?
Yeah, it's Arlo. It's spelled ARLO. Yeah, and there's, again, if you go to Costco or, you know, any kind of Target, any kind of store like that, they're going to have a ton of different cameras, and you just got to find what's best for you. I just use that, and you know, it'll save motion detection videos, and you're able to capture that. And like, if someone walks onto your porch and your Arlo captures it, and they take your bike and, you know, go off, you can send that video to me, and then I have that video evidence, which is huge. They're wonderful. And again, I know it can be challenging to navigate these systems, but please rely on your neighbors that are more tech savvy if you're having issues with it.
If they take the Arlo camera, do you have it at base?
No, we don't.
You know what I mean?
No, that's a great question. So we don't, unfortunately, but it's, you know, if you have, you know, say you're out of town and you get a motion activation, you can look at it and then you can call us and be like, hey, I'm watching it, there's somebody on my porch right now, kind of thing. Yeah, unfortunately, I think if we did that, we would probably have to hire 15, 20 more people for dispatch to monitor that for the entire city. It would be a lot. But also, the city of Novato has a program. It's a surveillance camera registry program. And if you Google Novato Police SCRAM, S-C-R-A-M, that's our SCRAM program, is our surveillance camera registry program. You can register your residents as having video surveillance cameras. So, God forbid on Nave Drive we have a shooting. We can pull up our map that has all of our surveillance cameras registered and see who has cameras, and we can come contact you and be like, hey, I see you have a camera, can I get your video? Type thing. So that's a really good partnership with the police department where you folks can help us solve these. Yes, sir?
Josh, we're registered with SCRAM.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. And I would encourage individual households to do the same. Or if Matt or even if Matt keeps a file of who all has video cameras, just some system so when if we have a major incident, we need camera footage immediately, we can get a list of everyone to talk to. It's very, very helpful for us in the first 24 to 48 hours of investigating a major incident. Aside from all the technology that we use in crime prevention, the best one is just good old-fashioned police work. So my unit, good old-fashioned police work. So you have graveyard officers who are proactive, out on the street every day, making traffic stops, contacting pedestrians. We have my old partner's in a probation task force where he keeps tabs on probationers in Marin County and does compliance checks. So we're, aside from the looking at camera footage and stuff, we're out there trying to prevent this every single day, every single night as well. And that's the fun part for me, is catching these bad guys before they victimize our residents, right?
So we call you, you said when you take the,
If you set up a camera?
do we call you in addition to registering?
No, just register it on there and then we'll see that.
If we experience this, and I know you said wait for the questions, but if we experience a crime, do we call you in?
So, and I'll talk about how to report a crime later on, but yeah, if you're the victim of a crime, you're going to call our dispatch center. Because if you call me and I'm on vacation or I'm at training and you have to wait a week or 2 weeks, that's not fair to you, right? So I'm going to tell you, you're going to call dispatch, ask for the next available officer, or you can report it online. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Another tool that the city of Novato uses is a crime map. So it takes probably a couple days for it to update, and for some reason there's a couple things not showing up on here that should, but I pulled this up yesterday, and as you can see, it shows as far north as Captain Nurse Circle down off Bowling Drive, and it shows every street in your neighborhood. In terms of crime, and that's from January 1st, 2022 to yesterday. And I checked, and I don't think anything happened out here last night. Unless one of you didn't report it, And if you didn't report it, then we're gonna have another conversation. But don't let me forget, we need to talk about the importance of reporting crimes. I'll cover that in a moment. But the money bag signs that you see are theft-related incidents, which I understand that the biggest issue you folks are having are theft-related issues. So I saw this and I was like, well, 3 incidents. I know at least 4 incidents, so there's got to be more. So I did some more digging before I came here because I like to be prepared. And this is what I found. In our computer dispatch center, it records all of our calls for service, all of our proactive efforts, all of our crime reports, all that kind of stuff. The most frequent type of incident in our computer system for this area was extra patrols. An extra patrol is an officer driving through your neighborhood just to see if there's anything suspicious. So that was the most common thing I saw. There's far more extra patrols than there are burglaries and thefts. And I understand that doesn't make it okay that you guys are experiencing that. Nobody should experience any kind of victimization, any kind of theft, anything like that. But I just want to acknowledge that our patrol officers are making the conscious effort to come out here. The second most were proactive patrols, which are vehicle investigations, pedestrian contacts, etc. The third most were property crimes, so residential burglaries, petty thefts, grand thefts, stolen vehicles. The difference between a petty theft and a grand theft is a dollar amount. I think they're all just, no one of them is more serious than the other. A theft is a theft and no one should have to experience that, but in California, a petty theft is a loss of anything under $950, and a grand theft is a loss anything over $950. A petty theft in California is a misdemeanor for stealing. If I sold $900 worth of goods, I mean, I think that's pretty serious, but in California it's a misdemeanor. And grand theft is a felony. And the reason that is because, just a little historical background, Prop 47 in California back in 2014 recategorized crimes because they were trying to reduce the prison population. And it was put on the ballot as a Safe Schools Act. But it reduced violent crimes and property crimes from felonies to misdemeanors. I don't think that's anything to do with schools, but that's how it got passed essentially. So another lesson, be careful what you read on the ballot. So that's why it used to be a $400, under $400 was a petty theft, over $400 a felony, but back in 2014 that changed. And then the fourth most frequent was 1 DUI, and I don't think that was anybody living here. I think it was somebody probably driving past an apartment on Green Valley Drive, and they were drunk so they didn't know where to turn. And then a warrant arrest.
Can I ask how much they get when they get charged for a petty crime? Or do they go to jail, or they just get a ticket, or what?
That's a fantastic question. So California law requires police officers, if someone commits a misdemeanor, I'm required to cite them, give them a citation or release them, unless they commit domestic violence, DUI, violated domestic violence restraining order, or the offense is likely to continue. And it's actually challenging to articulate why the offense is likely to continue. You know, if you contact somebody who has drugs and drug paraphernalia and you confiscate that, the offense isn't likely to continue anymore. Or if someone's prowling on your property at night and they're trying to steal a bicycle, the prowling itself is a misdemeanor, but I could articulate that if I don't arrest this person and take them to jail and I issue them a citation, they're going to go to the neighbor's house and prowl, right? So then in that circumstance, we would be able to book somebody into jail on a misdemeanor. But it's I would say most misdemeanors, we have to cite them.
So they're let out in the morning?
It depends. So with COVID, it introduced a whole different issue with bail, because under COVID guidelines, the state changed the bail system to essentially zero bail. So we were booking people, and they were out before we could finish our reports. It's pretty challenging, right? When you're trying to make a difference, trying to prevent this from happening, but the consequence wasn't necessarily there, right? And then we also saw that there was an administrative order with the county of Marin, essentially saying that the DA's office would not prosecute low-level theft and drug possession cases, things like that. So we didn't see a lot of traction from issuing those citations, making those arrests. Yeah. I didn't have the 2021 fancy numbers yet, but this was from 2020, kind of our crime laid out there, and it shows from 2016 to 2020. So it shows a progression or lack of progression in various crimes. So from 2019 to 2020, vehicle thefts jumped up a ton. Auto burglaries were actually down, which was good. We had less assaults, similar amount of robberies, a little less residential burglaries. Larceny total was down, so it was kind of good and kind of bad in some ways. But I'd be happy to share the 2021 numbers once I can get them accumulated for you all.
Excuse me.
Yes.
What is larceny?
It's that. It's like that forgery.
We gotta hold our questions to the end. Otherwise, at the end, it's great, but he's got a lot of stuff to cover, please.
Yeah, theft, forgery, things like that. So, before I jump into kind of personal safety, I want to talk a little bit about reporting crimes. How many of you have thought about calling the police, but decided not to? And I'm going to raise my hand because I have. Any circumstance where you're like, maybe I should report this to the police, but I'm going to, no, I'm not going to do it. Very loud, very high and proud, because I've done the same thing, right? And then if you could just shout out, what are some reasons why you did?
I attempted to call,
Okay.
and got put on hold, and 5 minutes later I was done.
Okay.
And that just happened last week.
I'm sorry.
Afraid of bothering.
Afraid of bother, that's my favorite one, yes. Afraid of bother. And my favorite one because I felt that too, and I'm going to hopefully shut that down for you. Was there another hand?
Suspicious person walking through the park.
Okay, and why didn't you call?
I wasn't sure if it was a resident or not.
Okay, wasn't sure if it was a resident or not. Anybody else? Yes?
You picked the lock on my car, but nothing was stolen.
I'm sorry?
You picked the lock on my car, but nothing was stolen.
Okay, alright. So you didn't feel like you should call because nothing was stolen? Okay. Anybody else? Yes?
Didn't seem that important.
Didn't seem that important. Okay. Alright. Yes?
I think that the alarm on my car went off at 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't see who it was, but I was like,
Okay. Okay. So alarm was sounding, but didn't see anyone around the car, didn't see who it was.
Someone entered my yard, but at night I thought it could have been a raccoon that set off the light.
Okay.
I realized it wasn't.
Yes?
I think in the park, one question issue that makes me wonder is trying to figure out whether or not we should be calling park management and getting security people we have, or calling police.
Sure.
And at what level of seriousness, how do you decide how to make that call?
Sure, absolutely. No, I appreciate everyone volunteering and what everyone had to say. So our dispatchers are trained to prioritize calls for service. So speaking to, don't want to bother the police. If we're going to, if someone got shot, or someone's not breathing, or there's a major vehicle accident, or there's a robbery, you calling and telling us you saw a suspicious person just walking through the neighborhood, we'll get to it, but we're not going to let a life or death situation go by the wayside because of your call. So there's no reason for you to feel guilty for reporting something because you don't think it's that serious. We'll get to it when we can. It might be right away, it might be an hour. I never want anyone to think that that you're bothering us or you're going to deter us from doing something more important, right? We all sign up to go to calls that the community wants us to go to, right? So that's what we're here for. I talked to some of you before, and based on the people I've talked to, I know that this group generally has a pretty good moral character and knows right from wrong and knows when something's kind of weird, right? You just have this gut feeling, like, this just seems kind of weird. Like for me, when I'm dealing with the suspect, and I feel like I'm getting the gut feeling something's weird, it's probably weird. I'm going to take the highest safety precautions I possibly can, right? Just did that today, right before I came here. dealing with a suspect who was potentially armed. And I took the precautions that I needed to take rather than going right up to him and trying to talk to him, right? So what I'm trying to get at is, if you feel like something's not right here, something's probably not right. And you should tell us. But I encourage you to think about how you're translating that to our dispatch, right? Our dispatch isn't seeing what you're seeing. And our dispatch is going to translate the information to me. So if you're like, they're just acting kind of weird, I just don't know how. Do the best you can to pull out more information out of yourself. Why are they acting weird? Oh, they're trying door handles. They're looking in windows. That's the kind of stuff we want to know, right? That's really important to us. Rather than walking in the neighborhood, our response time is going to be a lot lower than walking through the neighborhood and they're looking in windows, or they walked onto my neighbor's property, or they walked in by themselves and walked out with a bike, right? Those kind of facts are very important to us, right? And like someone had mentioned earlier, well, someone picked the lock on my car, but nothing was stolen. If you don't want to call us and tell us about that, I totally get it. You're more than welcome to. But you can also file a police report online. If you feel like you want to tell us something about an incident, but you don't want to call dispatch and talk to your dispatcher or talk to an officer, you can go online. And you go to our Novato Police online report, and you can fill out an online. Has anyone filled out an online report here? Nice. Was the process okay?
It was very easy.
Yes. Love hearing that. And I just want everybody to know, some people kind of get a little nervous, like, well, if I file it online, it's going to go into some junk folder, no one's going to read it. The graveyard sergeants are tasked with reviewing every single online report. Every single one. And then they assign it out as appropriate, if there's any follow-up that needs to be done. In your online report, if you have video footage or a photograph of the suspect or any evidence left at the scene, put it in there. So then the supervisor reads it and says, oh, there's video footage that we need. He'll give it to an officer will come out and contact you. Does that make sense? Cool. Any questions about reporting for now? Yes?
Well, what's the...
Sorry, I'm going to get in trouble.
My question is it better to call 911 or Novato Police Department directly?
So remember, 911 is for emergencies. However, at the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you Novato PD's direct dispatch number. It's answered similar to 911. Oh, here it is, yeah. And I'll give you two on a bigger slide as well. 415-897-1122. Don't worry, it'll be on a slide at the end as well. This is our non-emergency number, but it goes directly to dispatch. And yes, you might be put on hold, but hopefully it's not for 5 minutes. That's absurd.
Can I just add to that?
Sure.
The reason that I was calling is because as I was leaving the car, I saw some people that were sitting in their car who clearly were not old enough to live here, acting very suspiciously, and I hung up because I felt like I was wasting someone's time. So
When you're calling, we're getting paid to be here. And I live in the water too, so I can say this. If I call an officer, I'm not gonna allow for them to complain about having to come out here, because that's their job. That's what I do too. If someone calls, I'm gonna go out there and help you out, because you need us, right? That's what we're
I
doing.
just want to say that we need to come out and not.
Sure, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Yes? Yeah, I don't believe you can submit it directly when you're filing the report, but put in your narrative, you can type up kind of what happened and put in there, I have video footage and would like an officer to review it. Or I have video footage and I would like to submit it. There's a chance that someone's going to call you and they're going to send you a link, because all of our evidence, all of our video footage and digital evidence is kept electronically, and we can actually email you or text you a link, and you can follow that link to upload it into our database, and then we can review it. So that's a good way, a contactless way of being able to get your evidence. So personal safety. Everybody has to make reasonable accommodations for their safety. I don't know if MVS does neighborhood patrols. Is that something you guys participate in typically?
Kevin is setting that up.
Okay, all right. So, obviously when we're walking around their neighborhood, it's always good to walk in groups. There's a ideology taught in crime prevention through environmental design about eyes on the street. And it essentially means the more people, if you have visibility to the street, there's less likelihood of crimes going to be committed. If criminals if they're going to steal your stuff, where are they going to go? Your carports or driveways in the front of your house, maybe. walk around back of your house. But if they're in front of your house and they feel like they're being watched, they're going to feel very uncomfortable and less likely to commit a crime then. So if you have bushes covering your windows, you should get rid of those. You want the people on the street to feel like they're being watched. And when you're walking around, your head should be on a swivel, right? You should be looking around. The more often you're looking around and noticing things, the more likely you are to notice something that's out of place, right? When I'm driving down my street every single day when I'm going home, I'm very likely to notice something that's out of place because I drive it every day and I'm looking around, looking at the kind of cars and the people walking around and all that kind of stuff, right? So when you're walking around or driving down your street, I know it's really easy to kind of just get in like a head fog and like kind of zone out while you're driving, but look around and take note of some things in your environment. Always recommend walking in groups of 2 or more when possible. Well-lit areas. If you have any not well-lit areas, I highly encourage you to talk to your management. It's very important, and there's different types of lighting that they offer these days where some of them are brighter than others, and sometimes you kind of have to change it to direct into certain areas because sometimes having a light that points like up this way, like the traditional old street lights, it might not really be illuminating the area as much as it should, right? Having a plan is very important, and it takes 30 seconds at the most. Have a plan about what you're going to do. If I see a suspicious person outside my house, what am I going to do? And then when that happens, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, it's happening. Your instincts are going to kick in, and you're going to go do what you've been telling yourself to do. An example that I use is when I'm driving around, I will, in my head, I'll be talking in the radio, calling out a police pursuit. Because it's a very stressful situation that we don't do very often, and I want to be prepared for it. So when I'm driving around and I'm not doing anything else, I'm going through that in my head, or I'm going through my head, an example of, if I contact the person with the gun, what am I going to do? What's my response going to be? Because I want to be ready for it, right? And it happened today. And so and I walked myself through the process enough where I actually felt very calm and not amped up at all during it. And so that's what I'd like you all to do. When you're walking around, think about if you saw a suspicious person or if someone came up to you that you didn't know, what's your response going to be? And if you're thinking about it, you're already ahead of the game. Bring stuff with you on your walk. Some people like to bring whistles. My Sergeant Inkle, she always has a whistle on her, and I think it's hilarious. But it's great. And bring your cell phones if you need to call 911 or you need to call the non-emergency line. Bring that with you so you have access to that. Unfortunately, a lot of times we get someone's on a walk and then they see something weird and then they go back to their house and then 30 minutes later they're calling us like, hey, I saw this weird guy walking down the street, but it was 30 minutes ago. I really appreciate people calling and letting us know, but what's the likelihood we're going to find that person if there's a 30-minute time gap? It's slim, right? And it's okay if you've done that, but just know if you're able to call a little more immediately, then the better chances you're giving us to find that person, right? I would highly recommend saving your local law enforcement dispatch number in your phone. If you call this number, they can transfer you wherever you need to go. If you call 911, how many people have called 911 here? Have you ever been transferred to CHB or Marin County Sheriff's Office? Yep. All the time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you have, and I'm not saying you shouldn't call 911 in an emergency, you absolutely should, and all those agencies should be able to transfer you, but that number will get you directly to Novato PD. So 911, it might get you to the communications center in San Rafael, which dispatches for our fire department, so it's good to call 911 in emergency, but non-emergency, call this number, it'll get you right to somebody. You don't have to do the touch tone stuff about press 1 if you want to report a crime. We don't have time for that. We got to get to a person, right? And again, don't be afraid to call us. That's what we're here for. Okay? You're not going to prevent somebody from getting the emergency help they need by calling us. Also, one point about reporting stuff and making calls to us. When we have various neighborhoods throughout the city at various times that are having an increase in crimes, whether that's robberies or auto burglaries or vehicle thefts. When our department is trying to decide where they're going to direct resources, they're going to pull statistics. Now, I'm not saying don't call us about a suspicious vehicle, even though there's no suspicious vehicle. Don't make a false police report because you want more data, so we come out here more. But it's really important that you report suspicious activity so we can get an accurate understanding of the data out here and we can direct resources properly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. This is, talked about that. Okay. Again, to circle back to reporting suspicious activity, some issues that like I was talking about before, some issues we see include not getting enough information. A lot of times, we've had people call and say, hey, there's a suspicious person in my neighborhood. Okay, what's going on? Where are they? Well, they're just walking. Okay, why are they suspicious? Well, I've never seen them before. Frankly, our patrol supervisor might change that call for service to beat information. And an officer might roll by at some point later on in the shift. And the priority goes from priority 1 down to the last priority. That knife they were holding, or the fact, like I was saying earlier, the fact they were looking into windows, those are facts that we need to know so we can respond much sooner, right? So I'm not saying over-dramatize what's going on, but try to pull as much information as to why they're suspicious, because I haven't seen them before. We get so many calls for service every day, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls every day. Just the likelihood of us getting out there for someone walking through the neighborhood that I haven't seen before is very slim. And I wish that wasn't the case, but the reality is, like right now, we have 4 patrol officers to cover 20 on the streets during the day and at night to cover 26 square miles. So and then hundreds and hundreds of calls for service a day. So just we need that information so we can get officers there and understand what the what the priority level is. So some examples of why it's suspicious: looking at vehicles, trying door handles, opening mailboxes, hiding in dark areas, circling the area, specific statements. Like if they said something weird, like I'm trying to find my friend's house. Who's your friend? Bob. Okay, that's kind of weird, right? Like, tell us, be like, they're trying to find a friend's house, but they don't know their friend's name. That's very strict, right? What our dispatchers are they're trying to get information to establish if a crime's occurred. Because there's a lot of issues in policing right now where we're under a microscope and under major scrutiny. And if somebody's walking through the neighborhood and it's a predominantly insert race neighborhood, and they don't fit the description of the people that live here, we're not going to go to them because we're not going to put ourselves in a position of liability where we're going to a call because somebody feels that this person doesn't belong here, right? We have to be able to say this person might be committing a crime. Does that make sense? Okay. Suspect information. Again, the most detailed, the better. Think about, when you're describing a person, think about head down. And don't forget the shoes. The shoes are very important. They can put a sweatshirt on or take a sweatshirt off, but they're probably not going to change their shoes when they're running away, right? So think about, hat, hair, facial features, facial hair, shirts, undershirt, backpack. What color's the backpack? What color the bike is, all that kind of stuff. So top down. And then with vehicles, luckily you have a camera system, so if you don't get all the vehicle stuff, you might be able to get that later, but make, model, color, license plate, what sticks out about it? Is there a cracked windshield? Is there tape over a window? Stuff that's easily identifiable. If you call me, or if you call dispatch and say, oh, this person just stole my bike and they're driving a silver 2005 Toyota Camry, very common car, but you say that they got a cracked windshield, and I see that, that's going to really help me out with my, because I need to develop a lawful reason to stop this person, and that's going to help me figure that out, right? A little more information about what crime prevention through environmental design is. It's concepts about how you can make your property less likely to be victimized. So keeping your landscape trimmed properly. We see, when you drive through every neighborhood, you always see, vegetation that's maybe a little overgrown. It's covering a window, or it's overgrown enough where someone could hide behind it. the good school of thought with landscaping is trim stuff down and trim it up. Because if you're trimming it up from the ground, I'll be able to see someone hiding behind it, right? And if you don't know if something is an issue on your property in terms of like bushes or trees, have one of your neighbors stand behind it and see if you can see them or not. If you can't see them behind that bush, it's probably too big and it should probably be trimmed, right? And just trying to eliminate places where people can hide. Adequate lighting on your house, on your streets, in your neighborhood. It's at nighttime, especially out here, it gets very dark, right? We want to prevent people from having dark places to hide. So if you don't want to bug your neighbors, you don't have light shining in your neighbor's house, right? But if you can illuminate your driveway a lot, and it's motion sensor lights or things like that, when someone goes up there and they feel like they got floodlights in their eyes, they're gonna think twice about doing what they're doing. Fencing, I don't think does anybody have fencing in the front yard here? Okay. And that's good because then, if I was walking down your street, I would feel like I'm being watched because there's a bunch of windows and stuff like that. So that's good. We oftentimes see a lot of people with like fencing around their house where you can't see through it, and it kind of presents an issue where it makes criminals feel more comfortable to go in there and steal stuff. And again, windows and doors can be used for natural surveillance. When you're in your house and you're walking by the window, just look outside and see if you see anything weird. It'll surprise you. You might see something weird. You never know. Access control, especially with landscaping and rocks and stuff like that, you can actually, depending on how you landscape and maintain your property, you can control kind of where people want to walk on your property. So if your access control is like, okay, there's a definitive pathway with bushes along the side where somebody's going to walk up to my house, and I just so happen to have a camera right there. The person that comes up to try your front door handle is going to walk. That's going to be their easiest path. They're going to walk through that path, and then they're going to be right there in front of your camera. So think about that strategically where you're placing your cameras, right? Defensible space, I'm going to leave that to your guys' fire expert. That's more of a fire safety issue. I am not a hero firefighter, unfortunately, so I'll leave that to the fire department. So here's a good example of a properly maintained house versus a not properly maintained house. See the windows that are covered on the picture on the left? If I'm going to go, if there's a car parked right where this picture is being taken, on both houses, which car window am I going to break? The one in front of house on the left or house on the right? House on the left, because if someone's inside, they're definitely not going to see me do it. Or steal their car, right? So think about it. Those are the kinds of... criminals don't like being watched. So make them feel like they're being watched, right? Yeah, we talked about all that stuff. Eyes on the street, make sure you're looking, when you're walking out to your mailbox and you get your mail, don't have your head down in your phone like a lot of people in my generation do. It should be illegal to walk while you're on your phone. Just kidding. But look, when you go up to your mailbox, look up the street, down the street. Get a little more familiar with your surroundings. So different schools of thought on if we answer doors or we don't answer doors. You have to do what's safe for you. If it's unusual for people to knock on your door, don't answer the door. Answering phones. You do not have to answer your phone. And if someone is trying to talk to you about a credit card or a lottery or some big winnings, it's unfortunately, I'm sorry to report, it's probably phone. If you have cell phones, save all of your friends and family's numbers in your phone book. So when someone calls and says, and these are real life stories, when someone calls and says, "Hey, this is your nephew Josh, and I'm in jail in Southern California," you're calling me from a weird number. Or if people have been scammed in Nevada because they've had their great-grandson call and say, "I'm in jail and I need $20,000 bail. Can you give me your credit card information?" Is that crazy? They'll do these people are crazy. They'll do anything. But think about it. Say anytime you're feeling like, okay, this is a weird situation, say, "Hold on a second." Okay? hold on a second. Let me see here. What phone number is this? Let me Google this phone number. Does this phone number come back to the Rhea County Jail? But at the same time, I do caution you that people have been scammed and have, like, some of my coworkers have been getting a phone call from themselves. They're able to call from other people. It's crazy. So don't give your credit card information or your bank information over the phone. There's no need for that. You just be careful about the phone calls you're answering and any information you're providing. When people call me, and it's usually like a telemarketer, and they're like, "Hey, is this Josh?" And I'm like, "Nope," because they're like, you know, they're trying to confirm your identity, right?
That's okay, I'll call back when he comes home. That was
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Vacations. Unless there's a neighbor you're like, I don't really trust you. You should tell your neighbors you're going on vacation, so they can take a look at your property, right? You know, just so they can check up and make sure nothing's unusual. Hey, I'm going on vacation. I'm leaving this car in my driveway, so they can take a look and kind of make sure your car's still there, and make sure everything's okay with your house. Or if I go on vacation and I don't tell my neighbor that I'm going, and some person comes up and be like, "Oh yeah, your neighbor called me and asked me to check on the pet fish or something." And you're like, "Okay," and then find out that was a lie. You can be like, my neighbor doesn't have a pet fish, or my neighbor told me no one was coming by. And then ding, 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 let's call the police and get us out here and we can arrest this person, right? So, I mean, it sounds kind of silly. I'm giving you kind of weird and silly examples, but it's true. Like, this is how people victimize other people. We talked about video surveillance, scram programs. If your alarm goes off in the middle of the night and it wakes you up, it's like my car alarm went off. I think someone's doing something weird. At 3 o'clock in the morning, if your car alarm goes off, someone's probably trying to steal it. And if it's something I should have mentioned about when you call the police, I would much rather come out and make sure that it's a raccoon or make sure it's nothing than it go by the wayside and it turns into something. Because the worst case scenario is I'm going to drive through your neighborhood and not see anything suspicious. What does that do? 1, that brings the police to your neighborhood, right? 2, that confirms that everything's safe. Only good things are going to come out of that, right? But I guess the other worst case scenario is I show up and I contact a subject who's trying to victimize people and I arrest them. Well, good. Now I got this person off the street because the citizens were observant and reported stuff in a timely manner, and I was able to get out there, right? License plate read cameras, we already talked about that. That's pretty much all I have with crime prevention, but the most important thing to remember is you're really only as safe as your neighborhood and how you work together. The police department is also only as good as our relationship with the community, right? If we have a terrible relationship with the community and we don't talk and we don't communicate, then we're not going to get reports about suspicious activity. And our best cases and our best arrests have come from people reporting something weird. Like true story. Somebody reports an abandoned vehicle. Our community service officer goes out there, calls me directly and says, "Hey, I'm out at this abandoned vehicle, but the license plates don't match the car, and there's a weird guy hanging out here." I'm like, "Perfect, I'll be right there." I go out there, I'm like, "Oh, hey, I know this guy. He's a known Rhea County probationer that does drugs and steals stuff, and he's a dangerous person." I contact him, I search him, he doesn't have anything illegal on him. Okay, mental note, not going to forget you were here at this time. The next day, I see him rolling around in the car that was reported as parked. I'm like, "I remember you, and I remember you're on probation. I remember you have search and seizure, so I can search you." I pull him over on a traffic stop, get his loaded gun, and his meth out of his car, take him to jail, and guess who's in prison right now? Him. All because somebody reported, I might have seen him the next day and been like, "Oh, maybe I should stop him," but I was able to, because of where and I can talk about it because the case is disposed, because of where some of the evidence was in the car, I was able to say, he was wearing this necklace when I contacted him the day before, and now this necklace is in a bag with something with his name on it in a firearm holster. So that's why I think he knowingly was in possession of a firearm. So what I'm trying to get at is, you might think it's not a big deal or I don't want to waste your time, but you never know what it's going to turn into, right? And that's what we're here for, and I want to encourage you to call us, report stuff, communicate with us. If you have questions, you can always reach out to me. Matt has my contact information. I'm always happy to chat. And I would like to open the floor to questions, comments, concerns. Yes?
Please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I understand you guys know who the burglar is that is burglaring us. You have a picture of him with bolt cutters in his hand.
So we have a picture of him with bolt cutters, and I'll have to check with the investigating officer. I've seen the picture. I'm not 100% sure who the person is, and I know there's a vehicle associated with it, but the vehicle doesn't match. The vehicle owner doesn't match the person that is shown in the video, or shown in the pictures of that.
Okay, what's scary is, if we go ahead and we put money and buy cameras and stuff like that, if you guys aren't gonna do anything about it, it's a little on our expense just to put the cameras up. Like I said, I'm more upset that you have his picture, I heard you know who he is, and even though he doesn't have the goods on him, how can you stop it? It's been going on quite a while with this one guy.
So I don't know where you got the information, and I'm not the investigating officer, I'm gonna look into it, but I've looked at the video, or I've looked at the photos, and I've looked at the vehicle that Matt sent over. So I don't know where you're getting the information that we know who the guy is, because I've looked at the video and I don't know who he is. And in my role, I've had the luxury of contacting a lot of people who are committing crimes like this, and usually me and my partner can identify these people, and I'm not confident on who this guy is. And that brings up a kind of another legal issue as well. I can't arrest him. I have to prove up to a certain level before I can arrest him. And because I don't know who this guy is, we're definitely not at that point where we can make any arrest right now. Even if we know who the registered owner of the vehicle is, we have to go through a process of contacting that person, which has been, we've gone out to that house, but we still have to make the connection to who's the person committing the crime, who's the person driving, all that kind of stuff. And COVID has presented another issue for us with masks. Like, cameras are great, and you bring up a good point. Cameras are great, but they don't solve it. And they're not always effective. And just like my body camera, it doesn't show everything that's happening, right? Because it's pointed here, it's not going to show everything over there, it's not going to show, it's not going to always capture what I'm hearing. There are faults in the system, but when we've identified someone and gone through the proper procedures to confirm their identity, and we got probable cause to arrest, I would love to take it.
So, excuse me, your questions are really important, but a lot of them have problems hearing, so please come up here and use the mic. If you have a question, this way, please.
And while we're lined up, those are the more frustrating circumstances when we have a picture or a video of somebody, but we have them, we just can't identify them. So then we can't prove it, and it's very frustrating. And we take that very personally as well. I want to always close my cases and make arrests when legally I'm capable of doing that. Unfortunately, that just is not a reality with every single case. But we're always going to do our due diligence, absolutely. And if you report a crime and you talk to an investigating officer, don't hesitate to reach out to them and ask for an update. Reach out to them a couple weeks later and be like, hey, I know you were investigating my case. I just kind of want to see where we're at with the investigation. Is there anything else I can do to help you, officer? And they're probably going to say no, and they'll give you an update on what the case is. Whether someone's been arrested or they've come to dead ends, whatever the case is, right?
Yeah, well, so we're, I think, pretty much a community that are interested in prevention and stopping the crimes before they occur.
Absolutely.
And one of the problems I see is that the inability of you to prosecute crimes under a certain level, $900 or whatever. So is there a process that you guys are thinking about in terms of how, once you find someone who is actually perpetrating crimes, how to, put a handle on them so that they don't continue to do it? Because oftentimes, they get their wrist slapped and then they're back out on the street the next day, and again, we're a potential victim, or this community is.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I talk about the dollar limits and the issues with prosecution, but we're not just because the case might not be prosecutable doesn't, there's a level of proof, right? I have to have probable cause to make an arrest. The DA's office has to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to charge the person and get a conviction. So I'm going to let the DA worry about the proving it beyond a reasonable doubt. Although I try to write my police reports where a judge would read it and be like, yeah, there's no reason, this is beyond a reasonable doubt. So my point is, if we have probable cause, we're going to make an arrest. And we're not going to let what the DA is going to do or not do influence us arresting someone and taking them to jail or issuing them a citation. Even with COVID, I knew the DA's office weren't going to file, a misdemeanor drug possession case, but I'm still going to arrest the person for it. The rest of I gave them a citation, but it's still an arrest. So I'm not worried about that aspect. Also, I'm not worried about that aspect in the sense that I'll still make an arrest when I can, regardless of what the DA's office. Also, folks that have committed a lot of crimes, typically they're on some sort of probation. So I might not be able to prove the burglary, but I'm gonna, but when I contact them and search them and they got, bad stuff on them, then I'm gonna hit them with that case, right? So although I might not, sometimes I can't prove, the theft, there's gonna be another charge coming there, right? And oftentimes if, contact the guy, I think this guy stole a bike, but he doesn't have the bike anymore, and his face is covered. I don't have enough evidence to arrest him for the theft, but I'm going to search him for his probation terms, and I'm going to take, a stolen cell phone off of him, or drugs off of him, and then he's not going to go to court later, and he's going to have a warrant for his arrest. So then when he's prowling in a neighborhood, or he's, walking down the street and acting weird, but I don't have enough to arrest him for a new crime, he's got a warrant for his arrest, or she's got a warrant for his arrest. So we're a very proactive police department where, yes, there's circumstances where we can't prove certain cases, but we're always trying to enforce the law in another way. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Okay, absolutely.
Hi, on the matter of lighting, what about neighbors who have very bright lights on all night, so there's no night sky? And isn't it more advisable to have motion detectors so that someone is more alert, and scared like that?
Motion detecting lights are good, but criminals know that motion detector lights exist, right? So I never, sat there and watched the criminal come up to a house and steal something and go away, but I would imagine that they've gone up to a house, a motion detector light goes on, and they'll sit there for a second to see if somebody's, they see the blinds open or something and see, okay, yeah, it's just my motion detector light, and they continue on with their business. So motion detector lights help, but they're not for sure solution. And none of the things I said are an absolute prevention. I just want to give everyone some ideas of what you can do, and hopefully that'll work for you in the future.
Right, but my question is more aimed at, is it better to have lights on all night long, so there's no night sky anymore? And,
My neighbor bitching about my lights.
I don't, I can't say either way. I don't know, and I don't have enough statistics to prove whether motion detecting lights or lights on all night is better or worse. I think it's, I'm sorry. I think it's just a personal decision, yeah.
This is Jeremy, just from what we know, but we understand that there's only one way in and out. There's only one way in and out of the park here, but there is a trail, a Fireflies trail, that comes in. This might be going to Matt as well.
What about it?
Can we get, city thought, cameras?
Well, can you get it? Are you Kaiser?
Trail.
Go to Kaiser. And you can go to Safeway. Yeah. What you do is get online though with Safeway Pharmacy and make an appointment. Freddie just told me he could.
You've got to put it out in a certain place or a certain height where it's not going to be stolen.
Yeah.
We've had my unit has had a camera stolen from us that we put up. So we learned our lesson, but you got to be mindful about where you're putting them and how high they are and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, if you got a guy walking with a dumper, in and out.
Thank you.
thank you so much for your service in the face of fewer resources and more attacks on the police, so I really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Mark Leader,
Louder. Can you take your mask down? Thank you.
can you speak to the pros and cons of gated communities and emergency access for first responders?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. That's something I was meaning to mention, but so I appreciate that.
What was the question?
The question was, can I speak to the pros and cons about gated communities and access for first responders? There's a number of gated communities in Nevada. Some of them have different methods of opening them. The one I hate the most is over, I'm going to dime them out, but the Windover Apartments over by 7-Eleven off Diablo, because they have little key fobs. So they gave us a bunch of key fobs and put them on our patrol vehicles. But then those break really easily, and then now this patrol car doesn't have one, so you got to wait for another one, right? So there's the Los Robles Mobile Home Park off Robillard Drive, kind of behind the tire shop over there. They have a keypad, and that's really great because they can give us a call and say, hey, this is the keypad code, and if they change it, they can call us and say, hey, we changed our code to this, and then that way dispatch can. I'll have the key, I'll have access to that on my phone, but also dispatch if I'm responding to an emergency. They can either tell me over the radio or send me a message, probably send me a message so to make sure that information is staying off the radio. And then once I get there, I can plug that in. Or if you're needing assistance, I don't know if, I'm not super familiar with different types of gating, but I don't know if some residents have the ability to like press a button to open the gate up so first responders can go right in. If you as communities are going to look at getting gates at the entrance of your property, I would recommend looking at a variety of different ones. And I'm more of a keypad kind of person than a fob kind of person. But whatever you end up getting, we'll work with you on that.
In terms of their effectiveness against crime?
Yeah, I mean, I think the question was, what's their effectiveness with crime? I don't have any statistics to say whether or not they reduce crime or how much they reduce crime, but I'd imagine you can't. It's hard to get access. You'll have to work with Amazon and stuff like that. If you have packages being delivered, you're gonna have to provide that gate code to those folks. So there is a chance of somebody being able to get that information and using it. So if you are gonna get it, you're gonna have to change the code pretty often. You're gonna have to make sure everyone knows that the code changed pretty often and they get locked out. But I would imagine that they do help in reducing crime because criminals are looking for crimes of opportunity, and it's a lot harder to get past the gate than just being able to drive right. Yeah.
Speaking of opportunity, what time of the day, from that point of view, is it most sensitive, like 10 to 12, 2 to 3, at nighttime?
In general, I'd probably say midnight to 6 a.m. More specifically, I would go 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. probably. But on occasion, our day shift comes in. They usually start about 5:30. Sometimes graveyards at 5:30. Graveyards is going to be our small day shift goes on with them. But yeah, I would say that that's the time where most people aren't awake, around 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And when I'm on graveyards, I always tell, when I have trainees, when I do officers with me, I always tell them when I'm working graveyards, the time to go out and make your arrest is 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Because that's when a lot of bad people are. But I would make that more general to 12 to 6. Midnight to 6.
Hi, thank you for coming out. I was wondering if you arrest somebody with a petty theft and they get a misdemeanor, is there a way you can at least get a picture posted around our neighborhood or give neighbors a picture, a flyer type thing so they can watch out if he comes back again?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's some new laws about being able to post booking photographs of suspects, and actually the laws are becoming more strict, preventing the police from, because Nevada PD, not to toot our own horn, but we're pretty good about using social media and putting out press releases about our cases, and we always, in the past, have put put in photos of suspects, but we're actually, due to new laws, we're actually a little less able to do that. So I don't think that we're going to be able to do that. I think that we would find ourselves in a lawsuit for sure, which is unfortunate. If that, I'll check with my lieutenant who kind of runs the social media team and see what the actual law says now.
What about ones that are convicted?
I still think we're probably going to run into an issue. I mean, so you have, we have Megan's law, which is for sex offenders, but there hasn't been anything with like property crime offenders or anything like that. And there's also been legal attacks on Megan's law talking about the people think that's unlawful. I have a hard time believing we'd be able to do it for, especially with property crimes. I'll look into it for sure, and if I'm wrong, I'll let you know. I just don't think we're legally allowed to.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
But we are legally allowed to.
I'm sorry?
We're legally allowed to, when you arrest somebody, you can take a picture.
You guys can?
Yeah.
I cannot prevent anybody from photographing the police. Unless there's an inherent safety issue with you photographing the police, or your phone is evidence and I need to obtain it from you. Somebody on the sidewalk taking a picture or whatever, I can't, you're not breaking any laws. However, I caution, this is going to sound really silly, but I've seen situations like this before. I would caution you about blasting a photo because that could come back, and if it's, well, maybe, but also they could come back with a lawsuit. And we've seen a lot of lawsuits filed by people they wouldn't expect to file lawsuits, and they could say you're, defamation of character against them and kind of stuff. So again, I can't give you any legal advice, but I would be interested for you to talk with an attorney about what your legal ramifications are with doing that. But in terms of photographing the police and photographing us and saying we're out on your street, I can't arrest you for that by any means. I hope that answers your question.
This is more a point of information thing. Actually, a lot of the neighbors were turning their lights on, just their little porch lights on at night, all night, because they were afraid of what was going on. So we contacted an electrician who came out, and he advised us against sensor lights because he said, one, they don't work that well. And I didn't even know it. There's a light called a dusk to dawn, and it's on all night long. But that was his recommendation about keeping your property safe. So I just want to let people know, these things are out there. We didn't even know about them. And we were going to put sensor lights on and keep hiding and discouraging, frankly. And the other thing was 911. I called 911 before from 101 and gotten someone from San Jose.
Yeah.
And then they don't know the area, and they're asking you, and I said, well, okay, it's near DeLong Avenue. Well, I don't know where DeLong Avenue is. So, I mean, a lot of time is lost when you don't get a local 911er.
Certainly, yeah, especially when you're on the freeway. So I'll address the lighting and then the 911. Yeah, I mean, the more lighting, the better. I just can't speak to whether it's more effective in preventing crime because I don't know of any studies that show that steady lighting versus motion sensor lighting. I don't know any studies that show one or the other. With especially when you're on the freeway or like when you close your southern Nevada, close to the freeway, kind of close to San Rafael for the city limits. So yeah, you might get bounced around, and if you're going to bounce to San Jose, you can tell them, can you transfer me to Orange County or transfer me to Nevada? They might not be able to transfer you to Nevada, but if it's CHP, they would at least be able to transfer you to the local, to whichever jurisdiction. Yeah. But it's always good to save the non-emergency number, the 897-1122 number, because if you're getting bounced around on 911s, they might be better just about that. And if you call us and you need to go to CHP, we'll transfer you.
I just called 911 the other day for something, and they gave me a non-emergency dispatch number which was different from the one that you just gave us.
Let me guess, they gave you 897-4361.
No? Hang on, I just lost it. They gave me 472-0911.
Did you talk to the sheriff's office?
No, I talked to I called 911 dispatch on here, and I think they're probably Sacramento, but I don't know that.
Can you tell me that number one more time?
415-472-0911.
Can you give us the one you want us to?
That's the wrong one.
That's the communication, the Marin County Sheriff's Office Communication Center.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're trying to get a hold of the water PD, yeah, that's.
Okay. So I've got one other thing, which is just a point of information. If you put the police telephone number in your telephone, if you've got an iPad anyhow, if you just put 911, it comes at the very bottom of your list. So if you call it a 911, it'll be the very first thing on your list. So you don't have to scroll through all the telephone numbers.
I like that. That's a pro tip right there.
And if you put the number 1 and then the letter A, it will definitely be at the top of your list. My name's Suzanne Osborne. I live at 26 Meadowview Drive, and I just wanted to introduce my son Andrew, who is significantly younger than most of us. And Andrew, could you stand up? He's lived here for 13 years. But those of you who don't know him, he sometimes, when he gets home from Trader Joe's in San Rafael, is walking the streets, and I don't want anyone to be jumping him or wondering what he's doing. He generally wears a reflective vest, and he'll be definitely getting one of the armbands or wristbands to wear. But if you do need some help, call on him. He'll help you in any way he can. And I also had a question. Have any of the break-ins into the sheds, were they sheds that were locked?
I'll defer to, so I think, unfortunately, there are some break-ins that haven't been reported. So we don't have all that data.
Okay.
But the ones that have been reported have been locked.
Okay. I'm just wondering, I'm imagining the noise it would take with a bolt cutter to cut a shed that you might be more likely to hear it than not if it wasn't locked.
Some of these, especially in the middle of the night, they're going to make some level of noise, but also, if you're anything like me, I sleep through earthquakes and all this good stuff, so, my boss has called me 7 times in the middle of the night, and I call him in the morning, like, sorry. But, that does happen, unfortunately, but, hopefully a neighbor sees your lights going off or something like that and can call, but, and they have tools these days, like, grinders and things like that, where they can snap something pretty easily. Unfortunately, But when I see someone rolling around at night with that kind of stuff, you already know what I'm thinking, right?
Hi, my name's Marty Gelman, and I live at 185 Marin Valley Drive. Thank you for, this has been a very enlightening experience, just to hear your input on everything. I was thinking more like on a preventative basis, because that would be a very positive thing if we can prevent people from coming here. What if we put up a couple of signs in very big letters with a light on the sign that basically said that this community and property is protected by a camera surveillance system? That might prevent people from even wanting to come in here, especially at the level that you're talking about.
Thank you for bringing that up. I'm very glad you did, because that's something else you guys are taking care of me today. You're making me remember points that I otherwise would forget. I would be very cautious about putting up signs that saying, like, smile, you're on video camera. If you knowingly don't have functional video cameras, there was a case where an apartment complex had a sign that said, this area is being monitored by video surveillance footage, or one of those general signs. And then somebody was attacked right there, and then they sued the property and said, I felt safe here because this sign, and now you don't have any video footage, and now this person is out and might rob other people, and I'm suing you because it's your fault that I was robbed here because you didn't have cameras. And they won. So you gotta be, I would have, advise Matt, or if you're gonna do it on your own property, maybe seek some legal advice before you do that. If you do have cameras there and they're functioning to the best of your abilities, I would imagine you're going to be okay. Again, I'm not giving you any legal advice, but I imagine you're going to be okay. But yeah, that's been an issue in the past. But if you're monitoring your cameras and you're making sure they're working, and if they break, you fix them, you should be fine with a sign like that. And is that going to deter people from coming in? Yes, but it's not going to deter everyone, right? We have people commit crimes under cameras all the time. That's an unfortunate truth. But yes, so having, your signs help you, but they're not the end all be all, right? And I hope some of the things I talked about with the landscaping and the lighting and eyes on the street is helpful for prevention, but the reality is there's not one or multiple things that will be an absolute, unfortunately. But all of those coupled together and everyone paying attention to what's going on in your neighborhood and reporting suspicious activity, then I can partner with you all and we can work together to try to prevent that as much as possible. Absolutely.
Just one more point of information. MVest has put up 6 neighborhood watch signs in the last couple of weeks. And they're now all over the park. You might not have seen them, but they're there. And although we don't have an official neighborhood watch team, it's at the beginning of a deterrent. I don't know how effective it is, but we're trying.
Yeah, and neighborhood watch groups are fantastic, but we're all individually responsible for the safety of our house and our neighborhood, right? So, we can put together a neighborhood watch team that goes out and patrols and stuff like that, but you know your property the best. You probably know your neighbors pretty well and know them and know what they're doing. So it's all of our responsibilities as a community, and the more we work together as a community, the better we will continue to be at preventing crime, right?
I just wanted to recommend something that I heard, which is something I do every night. I take my keys and put them right next to my bed. And if I hear something unusual, my keys will be right there and I can press that button on the keys that will make a noise. And the panic button that will automatically maybe scare someone away.
Hi, I understand that a lot of the robberies, the thieves are coming over the hill, like where the pool is. And I don't know if this is legal, but I was thinking because of all the goats that are out and the electric fence, maybe we could leave an electric fence up. Is it legal? I don't want to electrocute anybody.
I don't know. My answer is I don't know if it's legal, and I can't give legal advice, but I would imagine that an attorney might tell you that if you're going to put something like that, you should probably put signs to warn people. But I can't give legal advice, and I would probably have your association reach out to an attorney to find out what the laws are.
Well, I think that wraps it up, Josh. No more questions, and we've been at this for an hour and 25 minutes. Thank you very much.